Top of the motherfucking morning to you, my friends. Welcome one, welcome all to my podcast, Alexandra Unfiltered, a show where we hypothesize, theorize, and analyze all about women's rights, women's wrongs, and everything in between. My name is Alexandra Rose, and I am your gracious host, and I am a bad bee with a law degree, simply doing what I do best. Ranting, raving, whining, and complaining. And not necessarily in that order. I'm so excited you've joined Alexandra Unfiltered today. I have an excellent topic that I think is especially relevant in our current political circumstances. Today's topic is the Pum-Pum premium, the painful reality of period poverty. Okay, if you are a person who has ever had the displeasure of menstruating, if you know, you know, then you understand that every month or around the time that you're menstruating, you have to go to the store and you have to purchase period products, menstrual products. These products can sometimes be costly, whether you use menstruation products such as pads, tampons, panty liners, the Diva cup, those menstruation diapers. I'm a personal fan. Or whether you use the period panties. Either way, those costs add up, and that doesn't include pain medication, over-the-counter pain medication like ibuprofen or Midol or acetaminophen or Tylenol to treat the pain or the cramps that come with your menstrual cycle. And that also doesn't include the cost of things like laundry detergent to spot treat any let's say, messes that may be created as a result of your menstrual cycle. It doesn't sometimes come on time, it ends later or ends sooner than we expect. So before you know it, you're spending like dollars every single time you menstruate on period products. And considering that approximately half of the world's population is made up of people who do menstruate, it's a global issue. So the first question you may be asking is, Alexandra, what is period poverty? Because I have never heard of that. And quite frankly, before I did my research into this, I had never heard of it either, to give you full transparency. Like I've said before, not only do I have a law degree, my undergraduate studies were in sociology, which is what I received my bachelor's in, and I minored in anthropology as well. Mind you, I graduated from undergrad in 2016 with my bachelor's degree in sociology, and all throughout my undergraduate studies, the phrase period poverty is something that never popped up in any of my sociology or anthropology discourse. Despite the fact that this is something millions of women around the world experience, or rather millions of people around the world experience. I'm going to do my best to use gender-inclusive language throughout the podcast this evening. So the first question, again, you're asking is, what is period poverty? Period poverty, as defined by the United Nations Women Department, is the inability to access or afford menstrual products, hygiene or sanitation facilities, and education on menstruation. This inability to access these items or these things leads to individuals missing school, missing work, and other daily activities because they lack the resources to manage their periods safely and comfortably. I'm really serious about this podcast this evening. So if you're watching on YouTube, I am reading some of my notes from my iPad, okay? Period poverty is very often the result of financial constraints, as well as social stigma, and the result of a lack of access to proper sanitation facilities. Again, if you menstruate, you know that you have to take certain extra steps with regards to your hygiene, managing your hygiene when you're menstruating, in addition to whatever your daily hygienic practices are. It's literally extra work that you have to do on yourself because it is what it is, right? If you know, you know, okay? Period poverty globally disproportionately affects low-income individuals, especially in underprivileged communities. Addressing period poverty is important for promoting gender equality and ensuring that everyone can manage their menstrual health safely and with dignity. Okay, so period poverty, again, it's the inability to access or afford menstrual products, hygiene or sanitation facilities, and education on menstruation. As I mentioned, I'm citing sources, or rather some statistics from United Nations Women. And as a reminder, UN Women is the United Nations entity dedicated to gender equality and the empowerment of women. So according to UN Women, millions, approximately 40 million are the estimated, or rather is the estimated statistic or number of people around the world who are estimated to not be able to afford menstrual products or access water and sanitation facilities to manage their menstrual health and hygiene. Periods make people miss school and work and also negatively impact their health. However, it does not have to be that way. All right. Approximately every month, according to data from the UN Women, approximately every month, more than 2 billion, that's billion with a B, you guys, 2 billion people around the world menstruate. Menstruation is a natural process. However, yet millions of people cannot afford menstrual products or access to safe water and sanitation to manage their menstrual health and hygiene. This inability to afford these basic things interrupt people's lives, rights, and freedoms. Now, I'm going to be candid with you guys this evening. I talk about, being a 32-year-old millennial all the time on my socials, right? I have a law degree, so that my student loan burden is quite high. um, Very embarrassing, actually, but worth it for my law degree. And to be candid, I live at home with my mom and my sister, right? Because housing costs, cost of living, student loan debt, etc., etc. I will be perfectly honest with you guys. And every time I myself menstruate, it is a task and it is something I have to explicitly budget for every month. And that budget has to be minimum $40 to $50 between the cost of whether I'm using pads that month, whether I'm using period underwear that month, whether I'm using tampons that month, whether I'm using diapers, whether I'm using a combination of the two, depending on my work schedule. It determines how I dress while I'm menstruating. That determines the color of the clothes that I wear. It determines the kinds of clothes I wear. It even determines the kind of underwear I wear, because if I'm wearing pads, then I have to wear underwear that is compatible with a pad. If I'm going to wear a tampon, then I have to wear underwear or bottoms that are compatible with a tampon. I have to remember to bring extra in my handbag to go into the office. When I'm going out running errands, I have to remember to bring extra products. I also have to remember to walk around with a pain medication. I personally prefer Midol, but Midol pack of like 40 tablets is anywhere from $8 to $10, depending on where you get it. And your actual hygiene period products themselves, one pack of an Always brand, maybe 24 pack of pads is anywhere from $8 to $13 or $14 for just a 24 pack. If you menstruate heavily, if you menstruate for extended periods of time, if you menstruate irregularly, then a 24 pack goes like water. Then you have issues with staining your clothing. Then you're buying laundry detergent. Like I said, minimum $40 to $50 per month, on top of the ever-increasing cost of living, on top of the ever-increasing cost of food, because now I have to eat, right? I am a human being, and starvation is a painful way to die, right? On top of the cost of gas to put in my car to get to work and to run errands, on top of my personal expenses and bills, my student loans, my credit cards. I help my mom with the light bill, the internet bill. I'm saying all of these things to be perfectly candid and honest with you, because I want there to be an understanding that period poverty is something that impacts all of us. And if it hasn't impacted you, or if it hasn't touched you yet, understand that it can and it likely will. Please see the definition of the feminization of poverty if you don't believe me. All right. I'm a 32-year-old millennial who is gainfully employed and child-free, and I still experience monthly challenges being able to obtain period products for myself. So if I, living in America, which is the global superpower, the premier global superpower, the imperial core, and fully have a full-time job and live at home with my mom, and I struggle to obtain just period products, then imagine the people around the world who perhaps don't live somewhere where there is clean running drinking water with which to clean and with which to consume, who don't live places where going to purchase pads or tampons is just a matter of getting in your car and driving to Walmart or Target or wherever it is that you purchase your period products from, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, anywhere you can think of, right? Imagine living somewhere where there isn't proper disposal or waste treatment facilities to dispose of your period products. Imagine living somewhere where you are in a war-torn place that is currently experiencing conflict of some kind, and you're menstruating and you don't have somewhere to wash, you don't have somewhere to dispose your products, you don't have somewhere to replace your products, you don't have access to pain medication. As I've said before, menstrual cycles are so unpredictable. Some days you're in debilitating pain where you can't even stand up or focus or work. Other days the pain is so debilitating it makes you nauseated. I'm being perfectly candid, and I'm going to be honest throughout this podcast, because one of the reasons why I observe people are so hesitant to talk about period poverty is simply because menstruation is so taboo, and unnecessarily so. When more than half of the human population of the world is made up of people who experience menstruation, why is it a taboo subject? Why? Because it's something that primarily disproportionately impacts women. And again, I'm using gender neutral terminology as best as I can throughout this podcast, throughout this episode. But it is a taboo subject, and it should not be. The taboo kind of smokescreen around this subject exists to shame people into not talking about it. And we know that things like poverty, things like disenfranchisement, those things thrive in shame and silence. And shame and silence force us to keep quiet about things that disproportionately impact women and girls and people around the world. So that is why I chose to discuss this today. And also, given our current political climate, as of the date of the recording of this episode, it's November 21st, 2024. We just got through a hotly contested presidential election. Given our political climate and given my platform and the fact that I myself experience this and my friends and my loved ones experience period poverty occasionally, if sometimes not every month, I would be remiss in not being candid about this formerly taboo topic. What is there to be candid about? There's nothing candid about discussing things like issues with your eyes. People openly discuss and say, oh my gosh, I have dry eyes. I have to go to my eye doctor and get special prescription eye drops. Oh my gosh, I have dry skin. I have to use a special lotion on my hands because my hands will crack during the winter time. Oh my goodness, I have chapped lips in the wintertime. I have to use Carmex or chapstick and things like that. Those things are not taboo, and those things are related to bodily functions, right? So the only reason discussing something like period poverty and period and menstrual poverty, the reason it's taboo is because it disproportionately impacts women and girls. Another reason why periods and menstruation in general are also taboo is simply because of sexism. It's something that impacts women, so it's on the back burner. Society says, okay, boo-hoo. Too bad, so sad. You should have thought about that before you decided to be born a woman, or before you decided to be born with the ability to menstruate. Sucks to be you. That's society's approach. You can go talk that over with your mom or your sister, or go figure it out with some friends or something, or go look up some Reddit thread or something like that. That's society's approach. Right? And we experience this. People who experience menstruation and periods know that even going to your medical doctor, your licensed, educated medical doctor, explaining any variations in your menstrual cycle month to month, in terms of the pain that you're experiencing, or in terms of your flow, or whether it's irregular, even your licensed medical doctor, who may or may not be a woman herself, will dismiss you sometimes, or just, oh, that's just par for the course. Everyone experiences that, menstruating. Everyone who menstruates goes through that. No! Even if everyone does, that doesn't mean it should be the case. Period poverty is something that should not exist. Okay? So the next question you may ask is, Alexandra, we know what period poverty is now, and okay, we're not afraid to broach this formerly otherwise taboo subject. What causes period poverty? Based on my research, there are several different factors that contribute to period poverty and that contribute to the stigma surrounding discussing periods and menstruation. So some factors include, again, stigma. Discussing periods and menstruation is almost globally like taboo. Globally, it's almost something everywhere, every society, every culture in the world almost generally frowns upon open discussions regarding periods and menstrual cycles. So stigma. The high cost of menstrual products is another factor that contributes to the taboo nature of talking about periods and menstrual cycles. So I mentioned before, I myself experience the high cost of menstrual products every month when I have to go to the store and purchase menstrual products. And again, depending on the regularity of your cycle, the heaviness or the lightness of your flow, how much pain you're in, what your budget is like for the month, minimum $40 to $50 each month. That's $40 to $50 I have to allot for my already tight budget living in an inflation price gouging crisis that I have to take away from my budget for food each month, from my budget for gas in my car each month, from my budget for paying my bills to keep my lights on and my water running and my cell phone on each month, because I just happen to be born with the ability to menstruate. So the high cost of menstrual products, cause period poverty. And the lack of water and sanitation facilities around the world that further drive period poverty and menstrual cycle poverty, menstrual poverty. Okay, think about the places in the world that don't have Whole Foods and Walmart and Target and Walgreens and CVS. Those places aren't readily available or aren't available widespread, right, with widespread access. Here in America, any city or town that you go into in any of the 50 states, literally, you don't have to drive far to find a Walmart. This is something, especially here in the Midwest where I live in Michigan, in Detroit. Walmart is on every block. Okay, same can be said for Target, on every block. Walgreens, CVS, no problems finding those. So although I have to allot money from my already tight budget, I still have accessibility to period products easily. It's just a matter of getting in my car because I live in America. I have access to a car. I have access to transportation. And even here in America, not all people have access to that kind of transportation as well. All right. So I have almost unimpeded accessibility. Even if I didn't have a car, by privilege and virtue of living in America, we have apps like Instacart and Shopped or Shipped, those apps where you can order items from your local store, like your local pharmacy, such as period products, and have them delivered to your door. Let's say you're low on gas. I've experienced this. I've been low on gas, or I'm in the house and trapped in a snowstorm or something like that, or I just can't leave the house for whatever reason. Because I have the privilege of living in America, a first world country, the premier superpower of the world, I can go on an app on my phone and have those items delivered to my door. There are people right now in places like Palestine, the Sudan, the Congo, not the Sudan, Sudan, the Congo, Tigray, Haiti, Myanmar, hundreds of places around the world where people are menstruating in the heart of civil unrest and armed conflict right now, who do not have access to any of those things I just listed off. Access to period products, much less access to transportation to get to somewhere with period products, much less access to transportation to get to somewhere to purchase pain medication, to manage their period, to manage their menstrual cycle. Imagine that, right? Menstrual products are prohibitively expensive for millions of people worldwide. For example, the pink tax on feminine products is partly to blame. And the pink tax, from my research, the pink tax is something that explains that women's products are taxed or at higher rates. And if they're not taxed at higher rates, then they cost anywhere from $1 to even as much as $10 more for the same product. For example, women's shampoo is always more expensive than men's shampoo, despite the fact that they have the same ingredients. And the most premier example I can think of are women's razors. Like, if you know, when you go into the store to buy women's razors. Personally, I buy men's razors simply because they cost a couple of dollars less. and they're taxed at a different rate sometimes. So it all adds up at the cash register. So I find myself sometimes buying men's razors. Also, side note, beauty hack for the ladies. If you wear perfume, I personally found that men's cologne is not only cheaper, but it lasts longer. So you get more bang for your buck, FYI. So the pink tax, for example, gender blind policies and different tax laws are partly to blame for the prohibitively high cost of period products. But policy decisions also go hand in hand with the stigma and taboo that is attached to menstruation. For example, I discovered in my research, if you're not going to believe this, I discovered in my research here in the United States, Viagra, a medication that is used to treat erectile dysfunction in men, is classified as a tax-exempt health product. Yes, you just heard me right. Viagra, for men who have limp dicks, is classified as a tax-exempt health product. Tax-exempt means that the individuals who want to purchase Viagra do not have to pay taxes on their Viagra to treat their limp dicks. The title of this podcast is Alexandra Unfiltered. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to listen. I'm not holding a loaded gun to your head with my finger on the trigger. You can step away, step aside. For what I am saying, the right people are listening, and I have the right message for somebody. And if it's not you, that is A-okay. Okay? So men with limp dicks can get Viagra tax-free. But people who menstruate and have to purchase sanitary products, those sanitary products that we use for our periods and our menstrual cycles are classified as luxury goods, and as a result are taxed at the highest rate. Are you so fucking serious right now? Be so fucking for real right now. Sanitary products for our menstrual cycles are taxed as luxury goods. Yeah, because when I'm buying plastic Walmart brand tampons, I'm just, oh my God, this is such a luxury. I feel so fancy. Oh my goodness, am I part of the 1% now? Like, check me out. I'm buying tampons. Get the fuck out of here. Be so fucking for real right now. So men with limp dicks, something that they can and they don't have. Menstruation happens to people who are capable of happening to menstruation. We don't have any choice or any say in whether or not we menstruate. It happens or it doesn't. And when it does happen, it happens, okay? Men with limp dicks can buy Viagra tax-free. That makes me want to call my local elected representative, like right now. Like, are you so serious? What are we doing about this, Congress, the U.S. Congress? Like, I'm not saying that to be cheeky. I have a law degree. I'm being so fucking serious right now. So what do homeless women do? Think about that. Think about that when you're sitting there asking yourself, why is this girl up here talking about women who bleed from or people who bleed from their genitalia? Because half of the population of the world bleeds from their fucking genitalia, and I am one of those half. One, and two, it's my podcast. I can talk about what I want to talk about. But think about homeless women, unhoused women. Like I said, think about women in places where there are conflicts right now, or people in places where there are conflicts right now who have to menstruate. And if they ever have any luck moving to the United States, they'll be very dissatisfied to find out that sanitary products are classified as luxury goods while Viagra is tax-free. I can't get over that. And when I discovered that in my research, I wanted to flip the table over. Be so fucking for real. And the other things I discovered in my research related to period poverty. More than 1.5 billion people around the world lack access to basic sanitation services, according to data from the UN Women. Sanitation services include private toilets and clean water. So again, people in places where they're experiencing conflict, armed conflict, who are displaced and disenfranchised as a result of that conflict. People in, again, just using some as a few examples, Palestine, the Congo, Sudan, Tigray, Haiti, Myanmar, just to name a few. And people even right here in the United States of America, the land of opportunity, quote unquote, experiencing that right here. Unhoused women. Think about women or unhoused people in shelters who are in homeless shelters as a result of experiencing housing insecurity, or who are in the domestic violence women's shelters trying to flee intimate partner violence. They still menstruate, just the same way that you still have to use the bathroom to relieve yourself. No matter what you're going through, you're still going to have to relieve yourself. People still menstruate even while they're going through some horrible nightmare situations. The body, depending on your body, you're still going to menstruate. What are you supposed to do? You're just supposed to what? Turn it off? I wish menstruation operated in such a way where I could just like turn it off, like it was just a switch that I could just flick and say, you know what, I can't be bothered with this month. I know I'm not pregnant. Everything else seems fine. I went to my doctor. I don't have any growths or anything. Great. I'm not going to menstruate. I wish I could do that. If it were just that simple, I promise you, every single person who could menstruate would do that, because it's too much. But imagine that, not having access to a clean toilet facilities, and not having access to running water contributes to period poverty, right? Not having access to safely managed toilets keeps many people away from school, and it keeps women away from work during their period or menstrual cycles. In fact, according to more data from United Nations Women, at least 1 in 10 women and girls in rural areas across 12 different countries were reported to not have a private place to wash and change during their last period. Again, 1 in 10 women and girls in rural areas across 12 separate countries, did not have a private place to wash and change during their last period. If you menstruate, you know when it's time to change your period product, you need somewhere clean and safe and private, right? So we take for granted here in America that almost anywhere you go, you have access to a toilet. If it's not in your own home, where you work, you have access to a bathroom. Even if you're out and about shopping and running errands at any store you can think of. I say Walmart all the time because I'm a Wally World girl. Personally, I'm also a Target girl, or Target. So Walmart, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, those places have access to public restrooms. So changing my period product is just a matter of going to the bathroom. What about the people who do not have access to running water or access to a bathroom? That contributes to the poverty of having a period, right? Period poverty is further perpetuated by stigma and the lack of information and education. Not only do many girls and young women lack awareness and are thus unprepared for their periods, but policymakers and adults who have decision-making power in schools and workplaces also fail to provide comprehensive menstrual education. Think about it. I am a 32-year-old millennial, so I graduated from high school in 2011. Pretty recent, right? Obama was president. That was the 21st century. My entire high school education, and throughout even middle school as well, we took maybe 1 or 2 classes in total that talked about menstrual cycles. I learned what I learned from my mom about menstrual cycles, and my aunts, my grandma didn't really talk about it that much. She was a boomer. May she rest in heaven. She was a boomer, and boomers are real tight-lipped about those taboo subjects. But I learned everything I learned from my mom. What if I didn't have my mom? What if I came from a family that had more uncles than aunts? How would I manage the knowledge of how often a cycle comes, what kind of products to buy, how often to buy those products, how to budget for those products, which pain medications are the best to use, what clothing is best to wear, how often you have to buy new underwear because your period was heavier than expected. These things happen. They thrive in silence because we're shamed and humiliated into not speaking about them openly. These things happen, and the more that we're shamed into speaking about it is the more that we're silent about it, and suffering perpetuates in silence. When we first moved to the United States, again, my family is a family of foreigners from Jamaica. When we moved to the United States, one of the most important things I remember being taught by the Black American people here, Black American people who, if it were not for their advocacy in the civil rights movement, us foreigners would not be able to be here in America. Black American people and Black American women specifically taught me closed mouths do not get fed. I carry that philosophy with me every day, and that's exactly why I'm sitting here today talking to you about periods and menstrual cycles. Because I bet you didn't know that here in the United States, sanitary period products are taxed as luxury goods, whereas Viagra is a tax-exempt health medication. Bet you didn't know that, but you know now, and you can act and think accordingly. I also found some more data that says that in Bangladesh and Egypt, only 32% of girls in the country of Bangladesh and 66% of girls in Egypt said they were aware of menstruation in general before they got their first period. Huh? So the topics of periods and menstrual cycles are so taboo. We're not even telling young people who are very likely to start having their periods soon. We're not even talking about it with them. They're shocked when they start getting it. Imagine being anywhere from age, 9 to 15. You know, it's a big age range. Everyone starts their period the first time at different ages. And you wake up one morning, or you go to school, or you are out and about, and all of a sudden you're bleeding from your private parts, and you were not expecting this. Oh my God, I would die? I would literally die. I would think I'm dying. Huh? Like, stigma and discrimination are especially heightened in communities where there are existing harmful social and cultural norms around periods. In some parts of the world, even today, menstruating people are seen as dirty or untouchable, thus restricting their movement and access to spaces. Pervasive myths in these harmful communities include that menstruating women and girls should not touch certain food or enter places of worship, and that these menstruating people should be isolated from the rest of society while they menstruate. Excuse my feminine pardon? I beg your Ross clot pardon. Away I say to me right now, Massa. Away I say. I have to be isolated. So if I lived in a certain community or culture and I'm menstruating, I wouldn't be able to leave my house to go to work to earn income. Excuse me? But if you come to the United States and want to buy Viagra and you're a man, it's tax exempt, get the fuck out of here. Bye. I have to laugh to keep from swinging on someone. That's ridiculous to me and my homegirls. Like, further research taught me a little about also who is affected by period poverty. So period poverty is a global health issue affecting women and girls and people in rich and poor countries. What women and girls can use to manage their menstrual health and hygiene varies widely based on their income and whether they live in urban or rural areas. For example, in Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Madagascar, and Zimbabwe, according to data from UN Women, adolescent girls and women in urban areas are more likely to use sanitary pads compared to those in rural areas who are more likely to use cloth. 1 in 5 adolescent girls and women in rural Ethiopia use no materials because they do not have access to sanitation or period products, period. No pun intended. So 1 in 5 adolescent girls and women in rural Ethiopia use no sanitation products at all during their periods. Oh my God. That number is compared to 1 in 20 adolescent girls and women in urban areas in Ethiopia who have access to sanitation products. Right here in the US of A, 1 in 4 teens and 1 in 3 adults struggle to afford period products, especially teens of color, teens in lower income households, and teens who live in rural areas. Right here in the US of A, 1 in 4 teens and 1 in 3 adults struggle to afford period products. What did I just say? I'm a 32-year-old millennial who lives in a major city in the United States of America, and I struggle to budget for my menstrual products every month. I was a grant writer and program director for the Exodus Foundation, a nonprofit organization focused on providing resources and housing here in Detroit to women escaping human trafficking and intimate partner violence. And one of the primary things the women in our women's shelter discussed was that they did not have access to menstrual products every month when they menstruated or had their periods. That was one of the first things they would ask in terms of when we were soliciting donations, in-kind donations from our surrounding community. We would emphasize, please do not forget to donate period products. In addition to sanitary products and cosmetics and clothing and bedding, period products were like some of the number one things that we had to ask for. Because again, if you menstruate, your menstrual cycle generally will not stop while you're in the midst of some kind of life crisis. If you are in an abusive relationship, if you are unfortunately being trafficked, if you're experiencing housing insecurity or displacement, if you're experiencing financial displacement or insecurity, if you live somewhere where there is conflict, your menstrual cycle is still going to make an appearance like, hey, I'm still here. Buy stuff for me. And if you live in the United States, the sanitary products I need to manage this menstrual cycle are taxed as luxury goods, while Viagra is a tax-exempt health product for limp dick men. You see how it's always limp dick men who are the sources of our problems? What do I say all the time? I say it all the time on my socials. Men are the source of most of our problems, but specifically the shrimp dick, limp dick ones. Because how is it that your Viagra is tax-exempt for your limp dick? However, the menstrual cycle I have no control over is not tax exempt. My pads and tampons are taxed as luxury goods because buying fucking adult diapers from Target and having to go through the self-checkout line so I don't get funny stares from the cash register or the cashier looking at me like, why are you buying adult diapers? Are you incontinent? You look kind of young to be experiencing that. That's taxed as a luxury good. Get the fuck out of here. Moving on. Anyway. A 2020 survey by Plan International showed that 3 in 10 girls in the United Kingdom, a quote-unquote first world country, struggle to afford or access menstrual products, and more than half of girls in the United Kingdom use toilet paper instead. Now, if you menstruate, we've all been there. Your period catches you unaware, either at work or somewhere in public. You don't have access to your products. You either forgot them, they're in your car, they're at home, you didn't get a chance to buy them, and you have to use the crumpled up little 1-ply rinky-dink tissue and make like a makeshift pad in your underwear, and it's all wrinkled and uncomfortable, and you just know that you're like bleeding through every piece of clothing you have on. If you know, you know. We've been there. I can speak about this candidly because I don't give a fuck. And the name of this podcast is Alexandra Unfiltered. What the fuck do you think unfiltered means? But we've all been there. But to know that more than half of girls in the United Kingdom have to use toilet paper instead of safe sanitary period products, are you so fucking serious? I wonder if the United Kingdom taxes Viagra and Cialis. I should look that up. So going into challenges that are experienced as a result of period poverty and menstrual cycles, right? There is growing consensus that managing menstruation is a health rather than hygiene issue, because the messaging we receive is that menstrual cycles are all about hygiene, right? Instead of it being related to your actual physical health. This is something my body is doing. I elect to take showers, right? I elect to bathe and wash my ass, right? So that I don't walk around smelling like 10 cans of Bounce That Ass every day, right? What my body produces, that's related to my health. How is that why are our periods and menstrual cycles discussed in terms of hygiene? Get the fuck out of here. Did we discuss Viagra and Cialis and how Viagra and Cialis are tax exempt? Is that hygiene related? I'm sorry, I can't get over that. And I will not. Today, according to data from the UN Women, 614 million women and girls are living in conflict-afflicted areas, and the number of women and girls fleeing conflict, crises, and disasters is on the rise. The United Nations Refugee Agency estimated that in 2023, women and girls accounted for 51% of all refugees. Women and girls accounted for 51% of all refugees. What did I say earlier? Menstruation does not stop during crisis, generally. Yet, menstrual management and women's and girls' health and dignity are low priorities during crisis response. During transit and in camps, displaced women and girls often lack privacy to change and wash. Internally displaced women and girls in Myanmar preferred disposable sanitary pads to cloths once they learned how to use and dispose them. So you see the lack of access and the lack of education. Once the person is actually exposed to this better product that's safer and healthier for them, they learn how to use it and prefer it. Because more likely than not, I've said it before, why societies work so hard to remove women from being able to choose what the fuck we want to do with our bodies is more likely than not, we're going to choose to either forego things like motherhood and marriage, or we're going to choose to delay those things until we're older and more mature and more financially and emotionally stable. So removing the choice would remove those barriers, because more likely than not, if you have the option, you're going to choose the option that benefits you in the here and now. So that's why societies and cultures work so hard. They work overtime in removing those options from women and girls. In the UN Women's recent report from Gaza and Palestine, more than 540,000 women and girls of reproductive age lack access to items to support their hygiene, health, and dignity. They are resorting to using cloth or sponges, dish sponges that we use to wash dishes, because those women and girls cannot access menstrual products. UN Women estimates 10 million disposable menstrual pads are needed each month to cover the needs and preserve the dignity of women and girls in Gaza. 10 million disposable menstrual pads would be needed each month for women and girls in Gaza and Palestine right now. Do you think the men will still be asking for Viagra and Cialis? I'm being serious. I'm being so fucking serious. This is this is wild. This is wild. I hope this episode has taught you what period poverty is. I hope that I've provided some illumination and some education to you as to how we can discuss this and how we can remove the stigma and the taboo around this very vital issue. And I certainly hope that the primary two things that you take away from this episode are as follows. One, period poverty is something that impacts every person who menstruates, regardless of their race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, income, educational level, geographic location, etc. It is widespread because, again, more than half of the population of the world is capable of menstruating, right? Again, using gender-inclusive terminology and language here. Period poverty impacts us all. Therefore, it is on all of us, especially us women and girls, to alleviate the costs of it, to alleviate the impacts of it. And it's on our lawmakers and our policymakers to also alleviate it. It's on our lawmakers and our policymakers to prioritize legislative decisions that remove the pink tax, that remove the luxury goods assigning to period products and sanitary products. That's on our lawmakers. It's on their shoulders, and we need to pressure them so that they make these things legislative and policy priorities. Things related to poverty are always public policy failures, and they're always intentional public policy failures. So period poverty, anywhere it is experienced in the world, is an intentional public policy failure. However, it can be rectified if we place pressure on our lawmakers. I want you to take that away from this episode. The second thing I want you to take away from this episode is I want you to remember, for those of us who volunteer at organizations and who donate, especially around this time of year, the holidays are upon us and we're all in a giving, donating mood. Please do not forget to give and donate period products. Wherever it is that you donate, whatever entity or body that you donate through. At the Exodus Foundation, I know that they are still taking in-kind donations as well as tax-deductible cash donations. But please do not forget, when you're in this donating mood, to donate period products and diversify the period products that you donate. Pads, tampons, Diva cups, period underwear, period diapers, panty liners, pain medication, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, Midol, Motrin, so on and so forth. And there's also a third thing I want you to take away from this. Suffering perpetuates in silence. Shame perpetuates in silence. Staying silent about the harms we experience as a result of public policy failures like period poverty only perpetuates that harm. removing and lifting the taboo and lifting the stigma would lift billions of people around the world out of period poverty. Closed mouths do not get fed. So we have to open our eyes and our mouths and our hearts to make alleviating and completely eliminating period poverty a priority. And together, collectively, we can do it. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I hope you've learned a lot. To learn more about period poverty, I'd recommend visiting the United Nations Women website. They have excellent studies, journals, and sources that discuss this at length. And UN Women is a trusted source of information. I'd recommend visiting their website. I'd recommend, honestly, just doing a basic Google search of women-led organizations in your area who may be looking for in-kind donations. And I'd definitely recommend donating to them as soon as you can, because there are people who are in need of period products everywhere in the world, even right here in the United States. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Alexandra Unfiltered. You can tune in next week. Next week's episode, we'll be talking about the feminization of poverty and the war on women's wallets. So some good content lined up next week. You can stream this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Don't forget to also like and subscribe to my YouTube page, Alexandra Rose Unfiltered. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky Social as well, Alexandra Rose, basically on all profiles. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great night. Bye-bye.